welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. So, this here, Alex Kurtzman admits a condition for him doing Star Trek was not having another male captain. This isn't the main focus of this video. The main focus of this video is actually this. The Borg story will be different in Star Trek Picard. Direct from Alex Kurtzman. Now, the reason why I opened with the first article is because it is absolutely relevant. Why? Because we're dealing with a man who has a history of making very, very strange demands on like conditions of being a showrunner for things. So as we go through this one, I just want you to think, how different is it going to be? Because I bet you anything, I'm going to predict it. Now, I don't know. I don't really follow anything to do with Star Trek Picard because I saw the trailer. It looked relatively interesting. I like Patrick Stewart, and I like him as Jean-Luc Picard. However, as more and more has come out around the show, I am starting to think that this will be his last go, and then it will be handed to the woman which is in the trailer. And I'll get to that because it's part and parcel of this overall theory. That I've got no actual issue with per se. My main issue would be selling it as a Picard show to not have Picard in it, which I think most people would agree is a bit underhanded. And that could be with anyone. I mean, if you pass the torch to anything, it could be a dog, a boy, a man. I don't care. If you pass the torch to anyone, but you still call it Picard, that's a bit of a problem. So anyway, Star Trek Picard showrunner Alex Kurtzman, he recently detailed that the show will give fans a very different Borg story. Now, in an interview with Vanity Fair, Kurtzman opened up about the difficulty of bringing back Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard, and how that led to this very unique and very different Borg story. Again, I don't think it's going to be very different. I think I know where they're going to go with this. And again, remember, that opening article that I opened with, just remember that as we go through this, because people always doubt, my like hot predictions, even when there's numerous evidence to back it up. So I just wanted to reference that at the start because there's evidence. So during their conversation, Stewart made it clear that he did not want to rehash the same stories he already told in Star Trek: The Next Generation, which makes sense. I mean, why would you? Why would you want to? Despite having, number one there, despite having Data there, sure. If you want to go down that route that you didn't want to rehash stories, that's fine. Now, Kurtzman explained, Julie and I were very excited about the idea of bringing back Patrick Stewart, but he did not want to come back. He said he was never going to play that part again. So we entered into that knowing that Patrick is going to have a major, major voice in whatever this becomes if we're going to get him to say yes. He doesn't want to repeat what he's already done, which was, by the way, the best bar he could have put forward. Okay, again, I agree with that. There's really, why would you just want to rehash old stories? It's a bit lame. And it's good for fan service up until a point, but then people do just get sick of it. So, no, I agree with that. However, there is a big problem with giving mass creative control to one of the leads in the show. That is a problem. Genuinely, that is a problem. It doesn't always work out negatively, but I do feel you constrict the creative balls of the showrunners when you do that. And that's not good. That's not good at all. Now, not even necessarily the showrunners, but the writers as well. Kurtzman would elaborate on this by saying, his constant refrain was, I don't want to do what I've already done. This would lead to what Kurtzman describes as the very unique and very different Borg story. Obviously, it's not a secret that the Borg were involved. And his first instinct was not to do the Borg. He was like, I did that story. I don't want to do that story. And we couldn't just say, yeah, but we loved you in it so much. We just want to do that again. And that ended up emerging. And what ended up emerging was actually as a result of that back and forth. A very unique and very different Borg story. Definitely not one that you could have told in Next Generation. And certainly not what I think anyone's expecting. Now, I think they're just going to do illegal immigrants. Come on. I think that's fairly apparent, right? No? That's my hot prediction. I know. Shock horror. I think they're just going to go down the route of having, well, yeah, basically the Borg will just be a reference to immigration. And I don't, again, I'm not saying that that's bad, but I just think, like, you know, entertainment and media being a vehicle for political agendas can be very tiring. And I also think it's very, very predictable. But this is a man who is saying that it's not something which anyone's expecting. Sorry, mate. Come on now. Alex Kurtzman admits a condition for him doing Star Trek was not having another male captain. You're very predictable, Alex Kurtzman. I don't doubt that the Borg is just going to be a vehicle to, like, an allegory for immigration, or it's going to be something to do with that. It has to be. I don't see what else the story is going to be. I think the young Borg girl that we see, sort of Borg-esque anyway, is going to be key in that. And I think she'll probably be who they hand the torch over to. But Kurtzman around this, anyway, he said about 3 years ago, when CBS asked me to consider doing another Star Trek, my first instinct was it's not going to be, it's got to be a woman, and it's got to be a woman of colour. I'm not interested in having another male captain. Remember, again, you have to remember these key points. When I say something like, oh, it's probably just going to be about immigration, and people go, preposterous. It's like, well, come on now. This is a man that demanded, basically, it has to be a woman, and it has to be a woman of colour. Why? Why does it? Okay, create a character first, then cast appropriately. But if that's what you're leading into and you're building, essentially, I mean, look, he's essentially saying that he's built the whole show around that. That is the whole show is built around a woman captain of colour. I don't, that's what? Does no one see how that's, like, not a good way to build a whole, like, sci-fi Star Trek series around? It's a bit of a weird thing to build a whole sci-fi series around. So when Alex Kurtzman says that the Borg story is going to be completely different, he built the whole thing around a black woman captain. I don't see that as anything positive in terms of narrative structure anyway. And I think many people would agree with that, because the result of that show has not been very, very good, has it? So anyway, and I continued to say, we made that very clear, and a condition of our involvement, and Julie was immediately supportive of it. And one thing I remember very clearly was that we were still casting the morning Trump was elected, and somehow in the casting conversation this question came up like, okay, do we have to reconsider this? And we doubled down and said this is exactly why we have to do this right now. And for me personally, I've had a harder time writing men. That's the truth. I don't know why. It's always been the case. So basically, he said, okay, again, remember this, guys. He's... he built the whole show around a black woman being the captain. And then when apparently Trump was elected, he said, no, this is exactly why we have to do this right now. I just think that's frightening that people feel they have. Do you see what I... like, am I the only one? Maybe I'm not being so coherent here, but I find that to be very outlandish and very... I don't know, not the right motivation behind making a sci-fi show. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Patrick Stewart, again, this is a man. Patrick Stewart has a key voice in this, right? And again, the Borg, very different story. Not something we're expecting right now. Not something you could do in Next Generation. You couldn't do a Borg immigration story in the Next Generation. It simply wouldn't have been possible due to their locale, you know, flying through space and stuff like that. So... this being set predominantly on Earth, then going to space, I think that's what we're going to be getting with the Borg. But remember this, Patrick Stewart was a very, very key creative voice in this show, and he has said this. You see before you 5 actors, and we are each one of us from very diverse backgrounds and experiences. Now, I don't think that was a conscious act when this series was being cast, but it's absolutely appropriate that it should be so, because diversity is becoming increasingly important in the world of showbiz and entertainment. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with these comments. But look, if anyone thinks for any 1 second that it was not a conscious decision, you're not very smart. They genuinely do have quotas to fit now. Again, I've spoken to directors that will admit to this. So it's not something which you can just kind of backhand away as nonsense and preposterous. You know, it's genuinely the truth. Anyway, whatever. I just find this interesting, to be honest. The Borg, I reckon, hot prediction, will just be immigrants. I think that's going to be the story. So what do you guys think? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you are new here, make sure you do hit subscribe. You can stay up to date on the world of pop culture and movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. I hope you all have a fantastic day. I've been Mr. H. Take care.